I'm Michelle. This is my so-called handmade life. I have a blog by the same name, which is now newly moved to WordPress, but you should be able to Google my so-called handmade life and get to it with no redirects. There should be no more problems, but that was a month-long mess, and it's one reason I'm taking so long to get back to you. That's also my name on Instagram, but on Ravelry, I am Mamatronic. This is mostly a knitting crochet podcast. I talk about what I'm making, what you're making, but it's more like chatting with a friend while we make. So I'm hoping that you can just put this on, you can watch or just listen and get busy with whatever you make, and it's just company for you while you do that. I ask you questions and you respond in the comments, and the next episode I try to talk about your responses so that it's as back and forth as possible. So hopefully you've got something to work on. This is going to be a long one because of you guys and how many of you answered. And just relax and pretend you're knitting with your friend who hogs the conversation. I told you in the last episode that I'd get right back to you in a week with a new episode, and I know you didn't believe me. I didn't really believe me, but it was probably 4 weeks because of blog issues. I just needed to make sure. I really wanted to make this change within the 30-day period so I could cancel my subscription through GoDaddy if I didn't like it. And I don't like GoDaddy, but the blog is moved and hopefully it doesn't look too horrible. My archives in the sidebar are still not organized. Everything's kind of a mess that way, the footers. But the information's there and the images are all there. I had to go through over 1,000 posts and reformat and make sure I hadn't lost data. The images are like moved, kind of like offset some, especially in the older posts. I'll get back to formatting those, but the important thing for me was that they were still there. It's good that I got 3 weeks, 4 weeks of doing that before this episode, because our question last week was, how is sharing your creative thoughts and works online changed for you? Is it still the best place? Is monetization and the lack of feed control discouraging you? Is Instagram still viable? Do you feel that the craft world is becoming derivative and even dumbed down? Where are you still sharing your creative thoughts and works, and how? Okay, I asked all of that basically between YouTube and Instagram. Got a lot of answers. But in the month that I worked on my blog, it took me way back to 2009 when I first got online looking at what other people made. I got into knitting, I got into photography, just, personal, not professional. And my creativity just expanded exponentially, being on Flickr and then Ravelry and like Craftster and sites like that. I didn't do it all day, but maybe 30 minutes, even maybe an hour, some evenings by myself. And I've just felt so charged up with, I could make this, I could do that. And I got all of that nostalgia, all of that feeling of just like, coal being dumped in the furnace of my creativity. It all came rushing back as I looked at those old posts. And they were just my old posts. Back in the day, I was reading other people's stuff, and it gave me that feeling even more so. I wanted to try new things. So I'm glad I got that experience, remembering before discussing this with you, because it helped define and cement my feelings on social media and crafting just a little more. I also wanted to put together all of your thoughts in a very coherent way that really represented you well. That takes a few days of thinking to do. So hopefully this won't be too long, or whatever, take it in chunks, or just, click away. So I asked you guys some of the places that you used to get inspired online. Before Instagram, maybe. Probably before Instagram. Like your first crafting days online, where did you go? I know a lot of you went to Craftster and things like that, blogs. I'll share some of mine. veryshannon.com was loving the mommyhood. I would go to her site, and then she had a Ravelry group. I don't know, maybe 2011. I got active on that. 2012. It was a great community. A lot of community building, not just selling a product. That was great for me. I enjoyed Knitty, of course. I mean, I would print out Knitty issues as though it were a magazine, and I put it in little sleeves. I think I didn't trust that it would be free forever. I thought if I print it out, that's how I'm gonna keep this, because, the internet was going to go away. I liked Stay Fancy Free, which later became Yarn Over Movement, that's now Tara Lynn Morrison's Goodnight Day, but it was a blog at the time and a Tumblr, I think. And she always had like image and kind of outfit inspiration. 2007, 2008, fashion blogging by regular people was such a thing online, and I thought it was fun. I liked seeing what regular people did, especially with vintage finds. The Snail and the Cyclops did that. Is it Miss Moss? Some of that. A Clothes Horse. I think she's still doing clothing blogs. And she was big into the photography of the outfits and things she made or bought. There was Color Me Kate, which was just Kate posing with lots of colorful stuff. It was just eye candy of, images of color, mostly fun-loving. There was Sewing on Pins is, Heather's, she still has it, blog. I liked Under the Red Umbrella, that's Katie. Elena Knits, these are some of my knitting friends that I met through blogging. The Gift of Knitting. I like Jane Richmond's blog. Oh, and Canary Knits was Teresa Gregorio. I really enjoyed hers. There was one called Moss Stitch Seed Stitch. I can't find it anywhere, and I don't remember who hosted that blog. Oh, there was also Oh Joy and a Cup of Joe, and then Forest Bound, Shop Lawrence, Preserved by a Promise, Mortal Muses. There was just a bunch of great photography, art, design, DIY, and crafting blogs that I followed. Andy from My Sister's Knitter, huge blog, and really, to me, one of the most influential community builders through blogging online, and then she extended that to her Ravelry group. I'm not sure if she's active so much on Ravelry now, but she did that, and I don't think ever sold anything. It was all just for the sake of community, and I remember everything being that way. Indie pattern design became a thing, but it was always like a side hustle. It wasn't a job, and so this wasn't super commerce focused. It was about self-expression and, I don't know, sharing with people. I'm going to have at the end an exhaustive list. I just went to my old blogger and I looked at a few of the blogs I followed. I don't think they were just Blogspot blogs, but they might have been. So it's still a huge list, and I'm just gonna rattle them out to you. I might even put them in the blog post that has the show notes. So I asked you guys, what are some of your older sources? I don't know how to say this. Arizo30 said the first knitting designs they saw were from Drops patterns. And I remember seeing Drops pattern ads on Ravelry all the time. I don't know if they're not producing them as much because they're free, or if it's just kind of being choked out by the glut of patterns out there. But so many of them queued that I haven't made. I keep thinking of this one gray hoodie that was super popular, and I've never made one. Kathy loved Ravelry groups. And if I think about it, most of you, or most of the people here or on Instagram that I know, I actually met first on Ravelry. Can you hear the wind? It's so loud when it blows between our homes. It feels so wintry. Too bad it's like 100 degrees. So Kathy and I connected on Ravelry in groups like very Shannon's group, so very Shannon. Virginia and her husband had a blog, and they made it together, and I didn't realize that. But I checked it out. It was sweet. And they enjoyed it, but like the rest of, most bloggers kind of abandoned it after a while. Now they've thought about vlogging, but the idea just terrifies her. I'm not sure why it terrifies you, but I would say now's the time to do it, because there are so many vlogs out there that, like this one, it would be easy to feel anonymous, I make this, and I'm surprised so many people answered the last episode. I took such a long break. I just felt like, well, I've lost most people that will watch, but there's kind of a freedom in that because you don't feel like too many people are watching you. So now's the time to do it. And Virginia, you can always set them to be private until you have a few. And then go back after a week and rewatch and say, okay, am I so cheesed out watching myself talk? And if you're not, if you find that you like it, because I hate the idea of rewatching myself talk. I feel so dippy. And I'm dippy. I am. But when I turn one on, if I have it in the background, say I want to remember what I talked about to make the next one, I'll start working on something and I find I'm listening and I'm interested. I know it's me talking, but I imagine that if it weren't me, I would still like it, even though the person's a big goob. So it's worth a try. I think you should try it, Virginia. Katinka did go to blogs for inspiration, but mostly skimmed. And you know how blogs were, and still are. All the good stuff's at the bottom, and the rest is just, 7 years ago, I learned how to cook. And then they talk about everything about this recipe, where they sourced all the vegetables, and then at the very bottom is the recipe. So I get why you would skim Katinka. By the way, Katinka is now the seamstress at the cottage on YouTube. That's her new YouTube channel, and I just suggest you watch her. Her Instagram has had video for a long time, and her videos are so sweet and peaceful and just restorative. So just want to say that. Serious Lisa read Nitty, like me. Yeah, I think we all did. And after a while, I found I made several things out of Nitty, and for a while there, I felt like it was a lot of sock patterns and shawls. And I was like, well, I'm never going to make socks and shawls. Well, guess what? This is all the socks I'm going to show you today, plus some. So I'm now going back and I'm looking at all those sock and shawl patterns. But at the time I was just into sweaters and hats. And the articles are really good to go back and read. They had a blog also, the Knitty blog. That was good. Lisa also liked Vogue knitting and interweave knits. She said she read them like a Bible each month when they came in, and she still reads them. But I have a thick stack of old early 2000s interweaves, and I love looking at them. And of course, so much of the styles and sweater design are back. Do you hear that? It's kind of spooky. I tell you what, when we have tornado warnings, that is nuts. I'm going to see if we do have a tornado warning. I have a thing about tornadoes. Hey, Adam.
Yes.
Do you hear that?
Yes.
Do you hear me talking about that?
Yes.
Do you know where my phone is? Okay. Just want to amp up the vibe here. Rachel, Haunted Craftster and Live Journal. Catherine didn't read a ton of blogs, but Tiny Happy was one. She did read and still does read, and I'd never seen Tiny Happy. The author's name is Melissa, and I went to it when Catherine recommended it, and I was just instantly charmed. It's so sweet. Tiny Happy, you guys check it out. Pam remembers first reading Pearl Soho as a blog. She didn't get into blogs really early, but it was the first one that she read. Lulu Alex did once read blogs, but or maybe did, but can't really see reading them now because she just doesn't want to sit in front of a computer that long. And, with vlogs, you can listen or watch your hands free. And so she just wants to use her craft time for crafting. She has backed away from a lot of online crafting sources, though, just for all the reasons that I talked about, the AI, the constant ads, constant movement, the need for video all the time on Instagram. It's very chaotic. And so she's backed away, but found solace in just doing the knitting. And she's loving it. She entered a photo of a stack of sweaters she wanted to reknit in the Recycle, Reknit, Remake knit along. And I remember seeing that photo and thinking, wow, I can't wait to see what you do. But she never posted what she did because she's just been busy making, not really busy thinking about making or looking at what other people are making or seeing what to buy to make, which I think is pretty universal with everyone who backs away from social media. They find they just are more creative, which you'll see. Several of you felt that way. I think a side effect of the knitting social media vibe is that we spent so much time viewing and planning and dreaming and wanting that we didn't have a lot of time left to burn off that inspiration. Or maybe we were even wearied. And that was like, I'll just go watch Netflix, I would feel worn out sometimes after trying to fight the algorithm and or just getting caught up in sales and who's making what, and oh my gosh, and what's this, and oh, let me look at that. And I go down a rabbit hole, and that was all my energy spent. So my creativity is stoked, but then it starts burning out with the constant scrolling, and it's gone by the time I'm done. All the inspiration. Jen has recently reduced her crafting budget big time and has found also probably the algorithm is not on Instagram as much. She's like, it's just very hard to see her friends and navigate. She's gone back to older patterns she already had and yarn in her stash and has loved it. It has been a great experience through the whole summer. So the habitation throw is one she said she's gone back to and enjoyed making. It seems like that's what Lulu has done. She doesn't seem so resentful about the algorithm and the commerce on Instagram. She's pushed it aside and gotten into the making. Stacy is one of my older social media friends. Not that you're old, but older in, I've known you for a while via blogging and Ravelry mainly. We knit a lot of the same things, and I think we haunted some of the same Ravelry groups. So she read my blog back in the day, which I appreciate. And Knitting School Dropout was another one, and that's Melissa Melissa Labar. And I recently went looking for her blog, and it's just defunct too. It's not working anymore, which is sad. She also read my sister's knitter, Andy's blog. So, how has the nature of your sharing changed? Are you more guarded? Do you water yourself down because you're trying to be kind of, as Heather said, polished for influencer perfection, or to be safe? Do you find you're watering yourself, your feed down, or just to be seen by kind of jumping through all the little hoops for video and stories and constantly staying at the top of everyone's screen? Do you find that the information is dumbed down? The art is dumbed down? Julia of the Happy Knitting podcast, which I didn't know your podcast, Julia, but I'm happy to know about Happy Knitting. She took some time to think about how much the knitting social media has changed in the last 8 years since she started getting active in it. There's a lot of pressure she feels behind makers to kind of go bigger and better, louder, shinier, sleeker. And it's an exhaustive state of being. She misses the old days of podcasts with poor lighting and poor sound, and I really do too. I miss the days of seeing what someone made kind of dark in their house with their messy living room behind them, or dog hair on the clothes, or they lay their work in progress on a table and it's got like all their junk, you know, the family's junk in the center of everyone's dining tables, like all the mail and the kids' stuff. I miss seeing that. I actually feel like I'm going to do a webcam only episode just for funsies. I've never even used webcam for a podcast, but I just feel like it will be fun to just see how many people I can turn off with my podcast. I miss that too, though. And as Rachel will say later, it was just so authentic. It was just like those early days of blogging, even when people are taking pictures just of stuff they bought and are wearing. It was like, here's me, here's my stuff. It wasn't so much like, buy me, you know? I don't know. Everything in me rebels against Insta-worthy photography. Even though I think my feed is kind of curated too now, you know, I don't have like the Vic Sav bottle in all of my works in progress photos. I wouldn't turn the camera the other way in this room because this is my bedroom and it is right now kind of a train wreck. I remember when they started selling like these placemats that look like shiplap for you to put stuff on, probably to sell your items like jewelry or yarn or something, but a lot of times people would just put what they were making on it, and I was like, oh, why? Just put it on your real table or floor. But I mean, I'm guilty of it too. We've all been kind of moved toward polished perfection. Okay, so Katie took a week off of Instagram just to kind of test if her creativity and attention span would change. I'm looking down a lot because I'm trying to really get what you guys said down, so keep knitting. She felt like her brain was being numbed by this memification of Instagram knitting and crafting community. She's active in several crafts. It just felt like nothing was new. And so, do you mean genuine, Katie? She knows that things can't be 100% original because everything's been done. But it just felt like 90% of it was rehash. Everything was derivative and dumbed down. And so, if you're spending all this time looking at nothing that would stoke your creativity, it's draining your energy. That's where I am too. I thought at first, because a lot of the transition to video and, memes and stuff, it's very TikTok-y. Typically, people younger than me are doing a lot of that. I mean, some people my age do too, but typically it's younger people. And I thought, well, am I just being like a curmudgeon because I'm in my 40s and I don't like that new stuff? I mean, I do like video. Like Katinka's videos are great, but I didn't like what I was seeing. And I realized that isn't it. I love following younger makers, and I loved following them to see how they grew. It was kind of gave me a sense of nostalgia and excitement for them. So I know it has nothing to do with a generational thing. I think what it is what Katie described. It's just, I like to create for the sake of creating. And sometimes I feel like now people are getting into creating for the influencer side of it more than the crafting side of it. And that's not evil. That's not evil. It's just never going to be my jam. I also kind of like personality and human connection. So, like Disney audio put over someone's video, there could be personality to that, sure, but not the millionth time I see it. Katie is still blogging, and in fact, in the last year, blogged more than she had in previous couple of years before that. Everything she makes, she's putting up a blog post for it. And I think I mentioned that I followed Katie's blog it was under the red umbrella. Now it's katiecanavan.com. Katie's a really good inspiration for somebody who is used all of her stash, old patterns, if you've done that, if you're even remotely interested in sewing, she does crochet, knitting, sewing, costuming, some great costumes. I recommend her blog, but she's actively been putting things on there. Maybe not as much as she did or as much as she wants to, but it's something. And it's been a creative burst for her. You know, it's different, you said, Katie, because, you know, maybe nobody's watching or reading now. But like I said to Virginia about vlogging, it's kind of exciting like it once was, because you don't feel so like under a microscope. You just do whatever, maybe no one will see it, but it's there for you. It gets those creative juices flowing, and the people who need to find you will find you. Do you think the old saying is true that you get what you pay for when it comes to online crafting stuff, crafting conversation and community? It does feel like, as a community, we've been sold on the idea that if something's really valuable, you need to be paying for it. It feels like sometimes if it's not behind a paywall, we don't see it as quality. Do you agree with that? I asked you. My personal thoughts: I don't begrudge anyone wanting to start a business in this industry or any other crafting industry and do something they love and make money from it. As long as they're presenting what they're doing in an honest way to people, that's fine. I don't have a problem with them doing that. If I'm not interested in it, I just don't have to watch. I am frustrated with AI pushing paid-for content forward, suppressing free, artistic, and community-focused content so that it's really hard to find. I do have a problem with that because it's not making Instagram money. It just kind of falls off the map. I do resent the way that this capitalization of everything is affecting the way our children's minds work. I'm not necessarily my children. They didn't grow up with Instagram. Like, there are children now who, from the time they were little, they get on Instagram every morning. It's like opening your front door to the world. So, I don't want them to believe that this is what art and what making is. It's being successful at selling it. It's looking like everyone else, talking like everyone else, jumping through a million hoops. That's like the opposite of art and creativity to me. It's like if it doesn't gain social currency or currency, it's just not valid. My children are in their 20s and they're totally annoyed by the algorithm and the memification of Instagram. And so, everyone's scurrying to market themselves doing what everyone else is already scurried to market themselves doing, and it goes down the chain, and I just wonder if there's a loss of real information. Sometimes there might be an adding on of creativity, like someone comes up with an idea and it gets tweaked a million times and it gets even cooler. So there's that. And then, of course, there's this idea that I got into making to save money and to do things for myself, because I enjoyed being a little self-sufficient. If I am paying to learn and spending too much money at the same time, making things online, wasting my making time online, it's like I might not even finish the project. It's like I failed on all fronts. So that's my own personal issue. That's not any app's fault. I have read some people say that the more time they spend on craft social media sites, the more excluded they actually feel. Just feel like a number or like a search engine optimization statistic. And they don't really feel like a person. They don't feel seen. They don't feel, intrigued or invested. So I thought that was an interesting thought. Virginia also recommended a book, 4,000 Weeks, which I'm guessing has to do with where we spend our mental energy and our focus. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get a print copy, read it, and share it with my children. Which I know they know. Like, if you're online too much, they know it's not great for them. I just don't know if they're ready to step back from it like I have. And I'm not even stepping back from it like some of you have. Macon has found that the podcasting Instagram community, like in her country, around her, feels very cliquish. It's like a club, and regular people who don't make products, aren't well known, just can't seem to get in. That's alienating. I've noticed that there are people, once knitting influencing became a thing, that just got into podcasting and making, maybe even a couple got into knitting so they could be an influencer. They didn't even really love the craft, but I'm sure they do now. I find it troubling when podcasters will host knit-alongs and never interact with the members of the knit-along, especially like, say, if it's on a Ravelry forum. It's easy to lose track of Instagram, but Ravelry is so obvious. It's not like evil. It's just not very community building. And most podcasters sell their podcast or vlog as community, this knitting community. And I just feel like when you only interact with people who are knit famous, it really waters down that feeling of community, because it's really not a community. It is, like Macon said, it's a club. So it's kind of like, I'm not like any big vlogger, but even for my little vlog, I have to decide, am I more interested in community or an audience? Because they're two different things, and one is a lot harder to do than the other. And if I didn't have any time, but I still wanted to be creative, I would shift more into, well, you can watch me do my weird thing. I can't interact with you guys, but I want community. That's what I want more. Even if it means it takes me 3 weeks to put together an episode, to share your thoughts and respond to you. That's really what I truly want. And I think a lot of podcasters still make that effort toward community, even though they're selling something, even though they're busy. Lots of people can do both. Hang on, my husband is gaming and he's talking so loud. His phone like this and he's losing it, whatever. Actually, I think he's playing like a snowboarding game. I think he's done with Call of Duty. I think he's just aged out completely from that game. Okay. What Macon has found is a Facebook group that is super active, super busy, and no one is put out by answering beginners' questions. People like to share tips, like to share knowledge, totally free, very welcoming. And it was like overwhelming to her at first. She's like, is this for real? Are people really like this? That's sad, but it's also really great that you've kind of found your people. And I wondered how many of you are really finding Facebook groups. I'm never on Facebook. I just see it as divisive politics. But Facebook groups are different. It might be a little more like a Slack group or a Ravelry group. And I could see how that would be cool, being able to share a video, links, projects and stuff. Okay, the sun is suddenly coming in and shining on me. This is evening light in my house, in my bedroom. So the problem, like I was saying, I've got so many notes here with capitalizing everything, is that eventually everything that can be sold is sold. And I just don't know, it's all rehash that we feel protective and proprietary about. I don't know. It gets stale though, and people do lose interest for sure. Catherine was also looking for a community that was not money driven. She's not sure yet. I mean, she would like to do a knit night, but doesn't have a lot of time, and introversion and all that. She's been disappointed by some podcasters going into Patreon immediately after starting their podcast and moving their interesting content behind a paywall. I get that. It's disappointing if you were interested in what someone's doing, all of a sudden you can't look unless you pay. I can see that being it's like there's this dichotomy. You're happy for makers who are doing it, having a small business and making it, but it can feel contrived and gimmicky as they try to get you on board, especially with the whole community vibe when it might not be. I find it a bummer sometimes to follow someone and be excited about, and all of a sudden they're only doing the 10-minute quick short videos that everyone says that's all YouTube wants now on the algorithm, and they're Patreoning everything else. And yeah, I mean, that's a bummer. I will say that my feelings about YouTube commercials have changed because YouTube puts commercials in anyway, so why not? I mean, I'm not monetizing, but if I had a lot of followers, I would, just because having a little extra money to justify taking time away from making money to make stuff, I get it. I get why people would do that. And if YouTube's not going to let you have a solid podcast from start to finish without commercials anyway, why not make a little off of that? Lulu doesn't do Patreons either, and finds that by the time a podcast introduces a paywall, she's lost interest in it. Karen really intrigued me. She has had her own business for 20 plus years and decided from the beginning that advertising just didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like her. She didn't want to do it. She put up some online like pages, business pages, but never really updated them. It's all been word of mouth and working hard to produce a good product and get it into people's hands without advertising. And her business is still going strong. She was able to work from home and be with her family, and I'm interested in how that's working. And I wonder how many businesses we think must be tied to the internet now could still do that. As I look into like search engine optimization stuff for mine and my husband's business, it's just kind of soul killing. I mean, and everything just has to be outsourced to someone who outsources, because algorithms are just so over the top. Content it's just, there's a falseness to it. Paying for content, tweaking your content to use certain words. I mean, I know it works, but just it makes me feel ill looking into it all. And of course, imagining doing that just for the fun of it, for your personal blog or whatever, Instagram, I don't get that. I thought it was funny though that Karen said she was so late getting to the social media game that her mom welcomed her on Facebook. Sunlight. Okay. Sharon has had a social media intervention. She quit Instagram and hasn't looked back. The frenzy of limited pre-orders and brand building has all been replaced with sustainable making. She's using stash and patterns she already owns, and she feels restored when crafting. Good for you, Sharon. That sounds like Lulu and also Jen. And Katie, actually. All of you doing the same thing. So, is Instagram still working for you guys? Lulu uses it on the computer only to block ads. Others of you have found a way to block ads. I need to look into that. Mary Beth says she's still getting inspo there, but the algorithm is a wet blanket. She's new to vlogs, and my sweater vlog, where I tried on all my sweaters, poor Mary Beth, was one of her first vlogs to watch, but she likes watching those now. That sound quality was so bad. I say that every time, but it irks me. I should do, like I was talking about stolen content, I should take that whole video and put it up again, but with totally different audio that doesn't have anything to do with the original. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I would love to do that. But can you imagine that 2-hour video? You guys would hate my guts so much. Okay, Rebecca has gotten good at scrolling past ads and suggested reels, but is disappointed that after you pass all that, it doesn't leave a lot to inspire you. And she also wants to know, where are you guys going? Pam, Lynn, and Adina all are feeling the stress of the app. It was overwhelming, and they've noticed lots of makers leaving the app and going other places. Lynn said those photos used to be, like on Instagram, it was photos, and they had a calming, soothing effect. They were creative. It was like, look what I made. Look at this beautiful landscape. Look at my family. I mean, there's something sweet about it. I know there was also some influencer pretension sometimes with that, but when you could curate your own feed, you didn't have to see that. I miss that too. Katinka doesn't enjoy the reels and the videos and the way it works, but that is how she keeps up with her overseas friends, and so it's worth it for her. And again, Katinka's, I'm going to link her Instagram and her YouTube in these notes. Her videos, they're the peaceful kind. Lynn, you would like them if you don't already follow her. Ada has felt less community, definitely. Now, she doesn't mind seeing products and things. It's like window shopping for her. But the loss of her friends in her feed has made her feel less community. Jennifer also just feels like everyone is disconnected from each other now. Heather feels this way as a maker, but is also a yarn shop owner and feels disconnected from the community. And she was selling things or promoting different services and products for her shop and Instagram, and she just hates making a reel, and you have to think of something every day or twice a day or 3 times a day, whatever, to show your products so that your followers, your patrons, whatever, can even see what you have to offer. That feels so unfair to me. And Talitha also hates the reels. Heather misses the days of blogging, and I told you her blog was sewing on pins, and great sewing, great knitting also. Dyeing too. I remember her first, that I know of, dyeing experiments. I remember when you used indigo, and I was just like, oh, I really want to do that, but that looks like so much work. And now she dyes yarn and sells yarn. But she misses the blogging and reading blogs, but owning her own business, all of it is such that if she even found time to write a blog, how would she have time to read anyone else's? And is that really community? That's something I noticed. Around 2017, I stopped responding in the comments of my blog. And Heather and Katie, boy, you kept commenting like good friends, and I didn't always respond. And I know, my life was crazy for a couple of years there, but it sucked because I'm getting these responses in this community, and I wasn't even responding back. I was on Instagram, and I was interacting with you guys on Instagram and Ravelry, but still. I had to look back at my blog, and I whine about the days of blogging, but I had to be realistic. I wasn't the greatest at community building. So going back and blogging now, no one's really leaving comments. My comments were all screwed up for a while. Now with WordPress, you should be able to comment, but I can't guarantee what I'll do with that. So I just felt like I needed to be honest there about my interactions in blogging. I read blogs, but I didn't always comment on them, and I didn't always respond to my commenters. Once I was on Instagram too, it was just too much. I didn't have time for it all. I just have to decide how much of my interaction do I want to be on a platform where I don't respond to people, Lori was unique, and her feelings were positive about Instagram or social media. She said it's upped her creative game. She's still getting inspiration there. And since she's not promoting herself or a business, it's no skin off her nose if her feed is hidden. She doesn't really care so much if people see her. It's more about seeing something that inspires her. I'm wondering though, if a lot of your friends are on there, because I think that's the main reason people are frustrated that I'm hearing in the comments is like, I can't easily see my friends. Like for instance, I went to type in Kathy's Instagram name I don't know, a few weeks ago. Usually it was predictive, and I begin typing it and it will show me all the people I follow with those types of beginnings to their Instagram name. It won't show me now. I could scroll through pages and it will not give it to me until I get to the last letter of her Instagram handle, and I'm like, that's crazy. I'm ranting about this because I'm not able to curate and control what I see as well. Why? I get it. But it is free, and it is a community that provided me a lot for a long time. I remember I was looking back in those old blog posts that I reformatted, and the one when I did Andrea Mowry's Gather shawl was after a death in the family. And I was talking about a discussion I had with some young people of if online communities are really communities. I'll link that post for you. And I've come to the conclusion it's not the same as an in-person community, but it can be a community. Now, it's harder to have that now, and that is my complaint about Instagram. If I can't see the people, I can't talk to the people. They can't talk back easily. But I did get a lot from it for a long time. So thank you for the positive perspective, Lori. So do you feel a difference between the blogging and the Instagram? Those of you who blogged, I do. I really do. Bonnie finds that when she takes time to blog, the words are so free-flowing, and she's amazed by how her making intertwines with her creative life. I found that too. I will start to talk about something I'm making, and it's just like so bland and, a list of things. And next thing I know, I'm thinking about stuff I was thinking when I made it, and I'm drawing conclusions to how it reflects on my life at this point. It kind of deepening, like, I don't know, a sock or something, but it's connections being made in the brain. So like random pattern notes will be like, I don't know, fuel in my creative furnace. If I want to write or articulate or make with purpose or craft with inspiration, the best thing to be doing while I wait for it is the thing I want to get better at. So I keep talking, I keep, writing stuff about a sock or whatever, taking photos, whatever, because, sometimes I'm inspired and I enjoy it. Rachel misses the old blogging days too, and the interactions we all used to have here on Ravelry. She is both overwhelmed by social media, like, the constant sensory overload, and the presence, but underwhelmed by the lack of authenticity. And I appreciated you using that word, authenticity, Rachel. And I'm sorry your first comment got eaten, because I would really like to have known all of your old blogs that you read. Katie finds that it gets her creative juices flowing to blog, even if no one else views it. I think I shared this already. It's like a good placeholder for her thoughts and reminders for one day. So all these things she's modifying or making, she can go back and remember how she did it for the next time she wants to do it, which I totally did, going back and looking at stuff for these socks. Like, I went back to my box of socks blog post back in, 2017, 2018, 2017, and compared notes with what I'm doing now. And I'm going to come out with a blog post soon that's going to have my revamped personal sock formula, because I got kind of sloppy with numbers and stuff. I made some socks that were a little too big, and I've also figured out what my favorite ways to do things are. That's just something that's coming. I don't get thoughts out there with Instagram like I do in a blog. It's not as therapeutic. And I'm absorbing a lot of stuff online, but it's not clear, cohesive, inspiring thoughts often. So it's probably too much information and accessory stuff that's not important, that I wasn't really made to absorb. So I find that, blogging has been way better for me overall. And just going back and rereading old blog posts, boring ones, I really enjoyed it. So Last thing I want to say on this topic. Oh, it's going to be so long. Where are you guys hanging out now? Where's your making inspiration coming from? Kathy and Catherine are both still using Instagram but blocking the ads. Lulu is still reading Interweave every month. As a member of Craftsy, where there's like $2 deals each year. I didn't know that, and I didn't know Craftsy was still around. Reading old knitting books, often used, and is mostly on Ravelry. I agree with you, Lulu, that Ravelry is still the best, easiest way for knitters to connect. And I love how you can go through a forum and think, who talked about that heel, that new heel type? And you type in the type of heel, and then you get the 20 conversations about it. You find the person, and within seconds, you have the link they shared or the tip they gave. I love that. And a lot of you have inspired me to maybe give my Ravelry group a little more love. I felt like everyone left Ravelry, and I had a post that was flagged, and I didn't even see that it was flagged, and the whole thing just weirded me out. I don't want to host a group where something weird or ugly or whatever is said. I don't want, that's a big responsibility. So I don't know, maybe I'll try to be a part of it more. I still post the notes for these episodes there. Katie was saying she likes to do TNT patterns, which I had to look up. Tried and true is what it is, but I didn't know. I was looking up all kind of weird stuff. TNT patterns, what is this? It's like a grandmother trying to understand the things the kids are saying. She uses tried and true patterns from the past and Pinterest as a inspiration. So you're still on Pinterest, Katie. I am too, but mostly just to put stuff into my Pinterest. And most of what I put, I do not even share because it's weird screenshots of sweaters on people in TV shows and or 90s images, like 90s inspiration that's dippy. And it's private, but I do like to go back and look at my Pinterest, and like picking colors to paint a room or whatever, everything is on Pinterest for like remodel DIY stuff. So you're on Pinterest. I need to check out your Pinterest again. Remember when we were all on Pinterest, and then when they started doing ads, how angry everyone was? And now I look back and say, Pinterest, you were so great, because it's so much better than what we're dealing with on social media today. She's also teaching her niece to crochet and finding appropriate patterns for the skill level she's at, and that's been inspiring too. And maybe just doing something you're not as proficient in, maybe. I made a baby blanket, which I'll just show you a picture of it here. I forgot to take photos before I gave it away. But it was about, this big. It was a nice blanket a toddler or even a little kid could use as a lap blanket for a long time. I did it with yarn from the Color Theory line that Two of Wands does with Lion Brand. I wanted to see what it was like for an acrylic. But I didn't really want an acrylic sweater. So I felt like I have wool. I don't need to, I just wouldn't have bought any yarn for a sweater for me, but it was a good way to try it out because there's nothing I had in my stash that would work for a washable baby blanket. So I enjoyed using it. It was nice and soft, and the color palette is pretty great. So that's a project I've shown you. I'm also thinking of doing Tony Lipsy's Crochet Academy. I joined. I'm getting the newsletters each day. I haven't started crocheting anything, but I want to do her Joan granny sweater, and it's a granny square sweater but with a kind of a almost boat neck V-neck. I like the shape of it. It's unusual, and I want to do a crochet garment, but I'm a little nervous, but I feel like Tony's the expert to teach me. So I have some Wool Ease colors already, and what I needed was another light color to kind of tie them all together. So I got this Wool Ease in like the light gray, and it's going to go with, and I'll flash a picture maybe or a link. to Tony's Jones sweater, but it will go with these colors. Canyon Sunset, had some of that, Umber, and Forest Green, Heather, and then I'm adding this with it. So here are the 4 colors together. I think it's going to be cute. It's very similar to the kit that she has, or Lion Brand has for sale for the thing. There's no wool in the kit, it's acrylic, but I wanted to use some stuff I already have, and I also had lion points, so this was mega cheap to get the odd skeins of some of these that I needed, but also the gray. And it doesn't take a ton to make this sweater. So I am gonna try that in the coming weeks. Start it anyway. That kind of gets my creativity going now too. So that's newsletter based, basically, or blog post based. A lot of you said you were going to newsletters, which I find interesting, and I'm wondering who you're following. Those of you who said you were using newsletters, I'd like to know whose newsletters you get. Lisa recommended Pearl Soho patterns for beginners or seasoned makers because they're classic, they're simple designs, and yeah, Pearl Soho has a huge library of patterns free. They're great. And they've got I think they've got a blog still going. Ada is on Making, but like so many others, she's nervous about getting on, spending a lot of time there if none of her maker friends are on it. I'm the same way. I have a Making app profile, but I just don't know. I don't know what I'll do, if I'll get on it. But I've heard so many of you say you're just kind of waiting. It's not that I'm afraid to do something no one else is doing. I just don't want to waste time on something, trying to connect with my friends if they're not there. I'm sure I would make new friends, but I just haven't spent time figuring out the Making app. Maybe I need to do that. One thing I did do, I got a free trial month with the Laura and Allison party. And that's like Allison DeKaisen of Knit One Chicago, that's now closed, and Laura McDougall. They used to both be kind of involved in Holla Knits years ago. They have this, basically it's like a community, an online community, and it works sort of like, it makes me think of Slack a little. There's threads for different topics, and you can share images of what you're making. You can, there's like Zoom knit nights, which might be a good idea for you, Catherine, something like that, Zoom meetings with knitting. There's little level up classes. This is all offered with basically the fee of a Patreon, like $5 a month. If you want to pay more, there's in-depth sewing classes. I'm just not that into sewing. I don't sew. So I'm not that into learning that I would do it. If I was going to get into sewing, I probably would pay for their sewing classes. Because you would have your classes there for sewing along with your knitting content. So for $5 a month, I did get the first month free, but I went ahead and re-upped for another month. There's knit meetings, knit meetups. They're doing Vest Fest right now, and I was finishing one vest, and I was making another, so that's been kind of fun. Classes about mending and sewing and different other things, all offered free. And then if you ever wanted to purchase a class on a specific sweater pattern, you would find all of that in your feed on that site, which would be handy. So it's kind of got that feel of Ravelry groups, Kathy. It really does. It has that feel. It's just not got all of the features where you can just search everything at a touch of a button, like with Ravelry. And it's a smaller group, but I've enjoyed it. I find that the Zoom knit nights, I never thought I'd like a Zoom knit night. I haven't done a lot of Zoom. I did at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was always so chaotic. I mean, it was kind of funny, but actually the other day, not on Laura and Allison party, a business Zoom thing, I actually had a first seeing somebody go to the bathroom accidentally with their camera on in a Zoom meetup. But they keep the Zoom things fun. They're like, moving and they're fun. So I don't know, that's something you might look into. A lot of yarn shops are doing Zoom knit nights and things, and there's other online groups doing them too. That might be a thing to look at, and I enjoyed it, so I'll have a link for that. Sharon has transitioned to newsletters. Tell me which ones. And Adina has journaled, never blogging, but she has journaled and loved that. And she is looking for some Facebook groups. That boy is so old. Man, if he acts like he needs to go out, I need to let him out right away, because there might be a problem otherwise. So, you know, I guess my conclusions, though, I'm pretty bored with Instagram, and Ravelry has felt a little neglected by knitters. I don't feel like I'll connect with everyone. It hasn't been super interactive to me. I've been withdrawing, but that's been kind of great. I have kind of escaped the mental chaos of all the news and ads and sensory overload of social media. I felt more inspired and calm. And I'm realizing the time I was spending for a while on Instagram was time I could have been making. And it seemed like a good trade-off, but it's not now. I just want to reclaim my creativity, and I feel like I have. I've reclaimed my resolve to write and make and do things, and they aren't all going to, most of them are not going to be things that ever get online. I'm not about that anyway. Just being somebody who's constantly making, watering something, growing something, nurturing something. I think that's who I was made to be. And the less time I'm online, the more I'm able to be that. So I'm going to have some links for you. And some of you, like Ada, I didn't mention, Ada had commented about feeling disconnected on Instagram. She has a new vlog too called The Athenian Maker. You should check her out. Ada can do anything. She's made shoes before. She can sew anything. For our Wing It cow, she made up a vest pattern. It was totally steeked. It was so awesome. So I just wanted to, I'll have that link there too for you. Okay, so I told you about that baby granny blanket. I used Lucy of Attic 24's pattern. I'll have links for that, and I'll even have a blog post on it, though I have no finished photo. So now, it's time for a million socks as quickly as possible. I realized some things about me and socks that have changed since I did my big box of socks. I need this, I like this. I kind of have a good formula, which I got sloppy with, and I started kind of getting my numbers off and making my socks a little big, which is fine because I'm not like wearing them to go running in. They're mostly like house socks, so if they're a little cushy and big, it's okay. But I kind of reevaluated that recently. So the main thing I knit in the last few years, sock-wise, that I didn't tell you guys about are smooth operator socks. Susan B. Anderson's smooth operator pattern is, I think, the best for talking about afterthought heel construction. So when you have a sock where you want to have contrasting heel and toes, I've just found it to be the best. This is the Ready Player One colorway by Mustache Yarns. It's a perfect must match set where you get two little balls of yarn that are exactly the same, so your socks will match no matter what. I chose for the contrasting yarn Regia, my first Regia. It's like 115 yards of this bright color because it matched pretty well with one of the stripes. I got it originally for another sock yarn to be the contrast, but I have plenty to do another set of heels and toes. So here is the other sock, and probably you know this, but if you've never done an afterthought heel, usually people will instruct you to put in some waste yarn where you want that heel to go. Usually 3 or 2 rows of waste yarn worked back and forth. Then you keep going with the tube of your sock. With the true afterthought, you don't do any waste yarn. You just put a marker where you want the heel to go. I don't really prefer this because I like to be sure, and I'd hate for my marker to fall out or to forget and then start cutting in a heel in the wrong place. Whereas as I make the heel, I can try the sock on and I don't get finished and then have a mistake. But you basically, you mark that row where you want your heel to cut in, and you know, I would pick the center of one of these gray stripes, and you slide your needle through all 32 stitches, or whatever it was for me, 28 below, and then also above, the rows above and below where the afterthought heel will go, that row. And then you cut it. You cut in the center. You actually use your marker to pull out the stitch and snip it, and then you start picking it back, and you'll have about this much yarn on each side. That just goes to the inside, and you pull it snugly, and you start making your afterthought heel like you would if you had used waste yarn. It's not really hard. There's a bit of fiddliness to picking up those stitches, but you know, you have to do that when you're using waste yarn too. The one thing that I don't like about it is just if I were to snip in the wrong spot after making the sock. I mean, once you have your measurements down, if you don't forget them, that probably won't happen, but I kind of like trying on as I go. But it was a good experience. I'll probably do it again. I found that I think because I have a high arch, I think I like more instep stitches, so I'll probably do 64 stitches instead of 56 when doing afterthought heels, because this isn't a very deep instep. You can see this is pretty stretched here. So that was my first smooth operator sock. Next up was Holly Jolly by a Homespun House. I love this colorway, and one of my favorite sock yarns, I told you guys, using it for At the Vicarage, was Herbstblatt Regina, her oak sock base. It was fingering weight, but it felt really plump and full, a lot like Jinx Yarn's sport yarn. And I think something about it, it's just the perfect weight for my hands. Well, the Homespun House plump, merino plump yarn, or plump merino, has that same feel. I just used some Knit Picks Bare wool. It was probably Stroll and natural for the contrast heels and cuffs. Susan B. Anderson has a gapless heel method. I don't think I did that here because I feel like there's a bit of a gap. I don't think I did it on that one, but I do think I did it on this one. I don't know if you can tell, but there's really no gap here, and there is definitely a gap here when you pick up that afterthought. So Susan's pattern has everything. It has a way to do no gap heels and how to do Kitchener stitch closures, which I did a Kitchener heel here. You can see this heel is Kitchener stitched together. But I did a no Kitchener closure on the toe, which is kind of just rounded, and you draw the stitches, a few stitches in, kind of like you would finish off a beanie. She has options for all of that, but this is Homespun House Holly Jolly Christmas socks, because I thought, I have some Christmas yarn, I really want to do that. Wood Pigeon socks. I used some pearlescent Stroll tonal for the contrast heels and cuffs and toes on this, and this is a West Yorkshire Spinners 4-ply. It's from their bird series, where they have like a series all with colors from birds, and this one is the Wood Pigeon. There's others I would like, and right now I'm not going to do it because I don't want to buy stash, but it may still be for sale. Webb's has a summer sale, and they have Robin still for sale, like, I don't know, $7. That's not bad for enough to make some socks. So this is West Yorkshire Spinners. Isn't this a sweet little colorway? It looks really old-fashioned to me. Smooth operator. I did a Kitchener heel on this one, and I did a Kitchener toe also. These are sloppy looking, yeah. I did a Kitchener toe. So I vary it. I don't know if I did the no gap method. I don't think I did on these either. I forget, and I just go into autopilot and I don't always make the best choices. Having the sock ruler by Kadrinkles also helps. And you could make note on the ruler for your family members, you know, the length of foot for them. I saw a pair of mittens. I don't see the pattern on Ravelry, but they were called sea glass mittens. And they use that mosaic stitch. And it sort of like gives it a broken, ribbed and striped look. They used the robin colorway and it was awesome looking. And they were just fingerless mitts. So these could be used for things other than socks, these sock patterns, and they look really good with various stitches. It doesn't just have to be a straight stockinette sock. From my precious Jinx yarn that's now discontinued, I got her Jack and Sally colorway years ago. And I probably had to wait for a limited, you know, a limited shop update to get it because it was so popular. So for these, I copied Laura from the Fawn and the Fox. She used a similar green or kind of a grello color to go with hers as contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs. And I thought it looked so good that I totally copied the look. I used 200 Harriet in the Peter Pan colorway by Skeins and the Stacks. And so I have a lot more of this. I could actually make a pair of socks with what I have left. It's a really great green color. I'm sorry, I have hair all over this. This is my usual sock length. I thought these look really cute. This is, like I said, a pretty plump, nice yarn to work with. This is actually a fingering weight. It's not sport, it's strong sock, but I still like the quality of her bases. Her sport though is my favorite. So for these, I've got no Kitchener heels and toes, and you can see this line is thicker because I do a thing. I have a problem with gaps coming in, like where the heel, where the toe or the heel is connected, like the gap from the front needle to the back when I do magic loop. There's a little gap there and it kind of looks like a dropped stitch. And I don't like that. So what I've done is move my decrease stitches in one. So say I get to the first needle and I'm ready to start a decrease round. I'll knit one, then I'll knit two together. Knit to the last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, then knit 1. And the same on the next needle. And that way, for some reason, this might just be in my head, but when the front needle and the back needle, the 2 edges are just knit stitches, I just don't have as much of a gap between them. It pulls tighter. The second pair, because there's really enough in a skein of yarn, especially if it's over 400 yards of fingering, there's often enough to do 2 pairs of socks. And when you do contrasting heels and toes, you definitely have enough left over for shorties or a shorter cuffed sock. And so I just made a second pair of Jack and Sally, and this time I did a leftover, and leftovers are so great for heels, toes, and cuffs. This is from my Love Note. This is Barker Wool Wildwood colorway. It's like a almost slightly green brown, and it's like one of my favorite earthy colors. I thought it looked so great with this. And what I'm enjoying is using contrast colors for heels, toes, and cuffs that don't exactly match the striping yarn. I think that looks great. For these, I did that little trick for no gaps here, and I did a no Kitchener toe and a no Kitchener heel. And they're just a slightly shorter cuff. Speaking of Jinx yarn, I had her Gingerbread House colorway that came with a contrasting, matching pink yarn for heels, toes, and cuffs. And this is her Strong Sport, which is so cushy and thick. It is my favorite sock base, period, to work with. It also feels super soft almost like it's got some cashmere in it. I don't know if you can see the halo. You can probably see the dog hair. This was just really a huge colorway for her. I mean, people went crazy. A lot of dyers started doing knockoffs of it. It was, I don't know, it's a sweet little color for year round, but it was a Christmas theme. And I can see I did not do the no gap method here. You see that hole? But I did on this one. So I get sloppy. I did a Kitchener toe and heel on both of these. So I'm finished with the smooth operators. I just saw the self-striping and assumed, but the reason I didn't do smooth operator or any afterthought heel, I usually do an afterthought heel where I have very even stripes, and going over the gusset area, the instep, would make a weirdly thin stripe. And even though I would do a contrast flap maybe, it would still mar the perfect spacing of the stripes. But with this yarn, you see this is very more randomly spaced. It doesn't make a difference at all. It looks perfectly fine. And then I just did a contrast heel for funsies. Same with the toe. I felt like the colors all looked in harmony with each other. Pumpkin Spice Latte by Mustache Yarns, a big hit at the holiday fall vibes, and I'm going to be wearing these soon. I did the no Kitchener, you know, just pulling tight with the stitches on the toe here, and I did my little no gap thing where I moved that decreased stitch in one. And with these, I like the striping so much I didn't want to do a different cuff. I wanted to see the striping even in the cuff, but I did try to make it have a look of, you know, where the color changed, that's where I made the cuff. So these are some little friendship socks I knit. The Frauke gave me this yarn, and it's Regia's Perfect, and it was my first time to use Perfect, and I really enjoyed it. And you probably know what Perfect is like. I did a traditional heel and gusset here, so you can see my gusset and you can see my, you know, traditional slip stitch heel flap. What's neat about these socks is they are made kind of like Mustache, except it's all in one skein. You unwind and you have a little bit of, say, a yellow color. You unwind it all and then you cast on for the cuff. And you keep working. Really, you could start at any point. So if you're making a child sock, you would start earlier in the leg, and your leg would be thinner. You start making the foot, the heel, all of it. You can just keep going, but these are really, it works well with an adult foot size. So I wear a size 8. I went ahead and made a longer leg than normal to use all of the striping, and then it's set to work well for a heel and gusset as one solid color for the rest of the sock. Because I don't have a very large size that I knit for myself, I had a lot of brown left over, so I just wind, and then you come to some green. And the green is like in between the two sock colors. Unwind it a good deal, and then you come to this color again, and that's where you start your second sock. So all within one skein. You have sort of timed and planned cuff, so you can do your ribbed cuff. This was a twist rib, which is one of my favorite, especially for toe-up socks, is a twist rib because it gives it a little more structure. You've got your cuff, and then you've got your regular stripes. Then you can go into your foot and toe. And for these stripes, I just did a little slip stitch detail right on the row where the color changed to just jazz it up a little. These are fun little, they make me think of camping. I actually wore them and took photos of them camping. I have yet, though, to put them online, but I'll be doing posts on all of these soon. But you won't even need to read them because you will know all the details. Odelaine, this is Melanie's pattern, and I just went blank on Melanie's last name, but I'll link it. Here we go. This was a really fun cabled sock pattern. I used Mockingbird fibers. They're not dyeing anymore. They're Tweety sock. I actually have had some color loss. This color has faded. It was a darker green, I think. It's faded to almost a denim. I actually don't mind. I love this faded color, but I've never had that happen with their yarn, so I don't know. It's possible I did something in the wash because I do throw my socks on a gentle cycle with regular clothes and just pull them out to dry them, air dry them. I'll link the pattern. Odeline is the name. They were a fun cable pattern, something to hold my attention. I knit 2 pairs. I'm just going to flash a picture here. 2 pairs of Arne and Carlos Regia Perfect socks for my daughter and her husband a couple of Christmases ago. And I think they like them. They did like them. I just don't know how much they'll wear them. We do live in Texas, but they also felt like they had to be very precious with them. I was like, nope, it's super wash. You can dry them, but I would just wash them in the machine and hang them dry. So he doesn't have large feet. And so his were just like a size or 2 larger than hers, and hers is the same size for me, but I did find this handy just in case to make sure I was getting the right size for him, because I didn't want him to, you know, get weird wonky socks for Christmas. Something I've been trying to do is when I finish a sweater, if I have enough yarn left over, is to try and make socks out of the yarn. Just, it would match the sweater. That's kind of fun, and it gets it used immediately. Because if I stick it in the bag, one of the many bags of little balls of leftovers, the chances of it being used are less likely. If it's solid, it could go in a lot more, and it could be used for contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs. I mean, variegated can too, but I find with patterned yarn, I just want to go ahead and use it for socks. So I'm trying to do that. I made the Mend shawl. This wasn't from a sweater. It's the Mend shawl is what I made. Dawn Barker's Mend, and I used some stash yarn I had. So with my leftover yarn, I thought of trying to recreate the little stitch, the different little stitch that you make at the, kind of like a linen slip stitch thing that you make when you get to the color change. I thought of trying to do that with the cuffs, but there's just so little cuff to this, and it doesn't really work the same in the small circumference of a sock. I mean, this would just be a mess. So I went ahead and just made regular socks in this color, and maybe one day I'll wear them at the same time as my shawl. They're just a shorter sock because I didn't have a lot left over. But I did the little no Kitchener heel. And then I found, like, this is to me my best fitting sock right now. I found that this traditional gusset and heel flap slip stitch heel, I think because of my high arches, I think these actually probably are the most comfortable style of sock for me. I also like doing a 2x2 rib, which I did on several of these pairs. Most of my smooth operator socks had 2x2 rib. Second to last but not least, I showed you the At the Vicarage socks. I think I had one done. I'm going to show you both now. What I realized, I knew this was a weird kind of sock, and strangely enough, as many socks as I've knit, I don't think I've ever knit a traditional short row sock. So I thought that's what this was. I now realize this is a Flegel heel because it's not a regular gusset. Can you see, like, short row heels look a lot like afterthought heels. Can you see how this has that little wedge here, and then you've got a no hole gusset? I mean, this is as smooth as can be, and I think that's the benefit of the Flegel. There's a couple of Andrea Mowry patterns that use the Flegel that I have in my queue, like Mondim and her Everyday sock pattern, if you're interested and if you have those. But Olivia of This Handmade Life has, I think, more than one that use a Flegel heel, but this was At the Vicarage and it did use that heel method, and I did enjoy it. It is a good fit. Now this is one that I, for some reason, I knit. I started toe up, Turkish cast on. I think this was my first time to do a Turkish cast on, and she is who I discovered this from. I loved it. Really pretty. Herbstblatt Regina yarn and Backyard Chicks. The difference between the Flegel heel and the regular gusset you would do with a traditional heel flap is that you knit continuously all the way to the heel flap, even making your gusset increases. And those increases stay on, I use magic loop for this, so my bottom needle would be the heel part, the top needle would be the instep. You're working those increases, say, on the instep. So you're gonna have a lot more stitches on one of the needles till you get to the point where the heel starts, and then you began working that just on your back needle, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until you get to the point where you're up even with where you were on your instep stitches, and now you join them all again in the round and work up. I'm not saying that well, but I'm gonna have links for how to do it, and I'm not giving a tutorial here. I'm just saying it's got a little more room than an afterthought or short row heel would. This fits kind of like a traditional gusset heel. It's also really smooth. There's no weird holes where you might pick it up wrong. And it's just really smooth and easy. You don't have to pick up stitches. Who likes picking up stitches? So I finished this with a twist rib and a sewn bind off. And I felt like this sewn bind off and twist rib actually doesn't look super floppy. So I was pleased with these. These were 64 stitches. That's what the pattern called for. My last sock to show you, also by this Handmade Life, Olivia Villarreal. This is Sweet Woodruff, which I didn't know what that was last time I talked to you about it. It is a kind of herb or flower, maybe like a wildflower. And fun pattern. It's a cuff down, and I like that it's an extra long cuff, which you could wear this way, but I do like folding it. And I just did a regular knit one, purl one rib, like she calls for. Traditional heel and gusset. I have no trouble with holes here because after picking up those gusset stitches, the next time I go around and knit through them, I just knit through the back loop. That first time I knit in them, and it pulls them tight. And it's a really fun cable pattern. It does take some focus. I was watching 9 Perfect Strangers, and I was missing stuff. Then we tried watching something with subtitles. It's Freaky, the Chestnut Man, and that's just a bust with something that requires that you look. I just finally set my knitting down. This is Miss Mothball's yarn, and it is the Blooming Sage colorway. She's not dyeing anymore. This yarn does have that very plump feeling though for a fingering weight. I do like it. It's a pretty high quality yarn. I dug in my little thing of yarn that I haven't used yet, and I balled up some Exmoor sock yarn from John Arbon. And this is an interesting British sheep blend that I will put at the bottom of the screen because I don't remember. It's got quite a halo on it. Don't know if you can see the little sheen. That is not my dog's hair, believe it or not. This is brand new out of the bag, so this is just the wooliness of the yarn, and I haven't decided what I want to do with it. I thought of one of those Andrea Mowry patterns, but I have 52 weeks of socks I still haven't knit from, and so I'm thinking 3 leaves, or I was thinking of knitting Kindred Spirits by Olivia Villarreal, This Handmade Life, because I just read the first 3, the main Anne of Green Gables books, and I thought it would be fun. So I'm going to have links to a lot of the things you guys talked about. I'm going to have links to some of the blogs that you guys used to have that have commented or your YouTubes, and also the patterns that I used And instructions on a Flegel heel, I'm gonna put that in there, or how it's different, or the difference in different kinds of heels. I'm gonna put that in also in the notes. Something about Tony Lipsy's Crochet Academy, also in the notes on YouTube. And all the blogs that I'm gonna read off at the end of this post, I'm not gonna put that on YouTube, but you can find that if you really want to know and chase some of those down in the blog post that talks about this podcast. I think we've covered everything there is to say about Instagram, but I want to know, if I was to make the most meme-tastic, obnoxious, unoriginal podcast episode ever, what would I need to include in it? Audio from a Disney movie playing over me while I do my knitting? Would I need to throw yarn at the camera and all of a sudden, ta-ta, you know, a full project I'm wearing on me? Boomerangs. Remember back when, for a while, like all these Instagram, especially people selling products, it would be a blonde woman with her hair pulled up in a top knot, knitting in Daisy Dukes on her bed. Would I need to be wearing Daisy Dukes and my hair up in a top knot for you guys? What would make the most meme-tastic, obnoxious podcast ever? Please tell me in the comments. And also, like a for real question, what new things are you thinking of trying? Has this episode or recently, have you been inspired to try something new like this week or this month, next month? I would like to know. I'm gonna try Tony Lipsy's Crochet Academy, and I'm gonna try and make my first crochet garment soon. I'm interested in what you guys are going to do. Longest episode ever. We never need to talk about the internet again, and you all hate me and never want to watch me. And now you're thinking, you know, that was so long and so long form. I could really use a reel right now. So long. I'm literally gonna have a sore throat from all this talking. I don't really talk much. Can you tell?